South Africa, of course, is already in the situation where roughly 28 million people are receiving grants. That's roughly half the population. In a sense, the socialist target has largely been met.
Facing the possibility of the acceleration of declining ANC support at the national and provincial polls, the party's leftist alliance partner, the South African Communist Party, resolved at its latest conference that it will not split from the alliance, but rather rebuild with the aim of retaining governance of the country. Joining me to discuss is Gabriel Crouse. He is head of campaigns at the Institute of Race Relations. Gabriel, thanks very much for being with us. What were your thoughts on the SACP conference last week and the comments that came out of it? Do you take it to heart that everything is hunky-dory in the land of leftism?
I do think that there was, at the very least, a serious appraisal of how difficult the position is of the radical left in South Africa. Comments both from the ANC and the SACP to the effect that the prospects for an ANC majority in 2024 is at this stage unlikely. That being said, I did also find it amusing, I suppose is the word, to see behind our president, Ramaphosa, at the SACP conference, the words 100 years of unbroken struggle. Of course, what happened in 1922 at the Rand Revolt was the South African communism's grand birth into the crucible of fire and bloody terror. And the slogan of the day was "Workers of the world unite for a white South Africa." That was communism's first great contribution to this country's history. And the fact that the Communist Party is deliberately connecting itself to that centenary, or the centenary of communism in South Africa to 1920-22, I thought speaks to something very disturbing. A kind of unbroken chain of damaging ideas, bad ideas, alternating between a straight leftism, classist analysis, according to which those who own wealth are inherently and inevitably oppressing those who are poor, and deviating between that and an analysis of race Marxism, according to which the basic classist divide gets superimposed onto the idea of one race being a victim, originally the white race or the white Afrikaans race, very much standing in that role, and now the black race. In this regard, I think it's always good to remember John Cain Berman, the former CEO of the Institute of Race Relations, who said that South Africa sits between two fires, one a kind of hardened communism and the other a kind of race nationalism. And there was just something about that image, that phrase, 100 years of unbroken struggle, which I think recalled that symbolically, but it's very much something that I see in practical terms coming out of the SACP.
Gabriel, outgoing SACP General Secretary Bladen Nzimande warned his members about any plans to divorce from the ANC and to contest elections on their own. So for those of you who are keen to get some party memorabilia for the SACP in the upcoming elections, that might not be happening just yet. According to Nzimande, if the ANC loses the elections in 2024, it would result in South Africa returning to the hands of white people. And this warning was contained in his political report, which he tabled at the National Congress last week. With him now being outgoing, do you foresee any change in that sort of rhetoric from the SACP? And just comment a little bit on some of your own research and your own insights in terms of how perhaps his comments and his thoughts about the country being returned to white people, quote unquote, is divorced from the reality in terms of how different South Africans try to live together and work together.
This is not the first time we've heard this kind of thing. In 2014, when Cyril Ramaphosa rejoined politics, he was famously caught on a hot mic telling constituents that they needed to vote for the ANC or else the Boers will come back to control us. This has been a kind of winning formula electorally for the ANC. I don't think that the formula is going to continue to serve them. I think that the 2021 election results at national municipal scale already show the wearing thin of that kind of talk. So the ideology of the ANC and of particularly that part of the ANC and SACP that have predominated since after Thabo Mbeki, is fundamentally disconnected from the values of most South Africans, which tend to be quite conservative and unfortunately or fortunately, whatever the case is, on your own value judgment, ordinary people's values have not been channeled through government. In fact, the tripartite alliance has led where others have feared to follow.
And Gabriel, finally, I just wanted to give you a bit of an opportunity to point to specific policies which might be originating from within the SACP and which are now being manifested in different departments, any proposed regulations or laws which are on the table, and which the majority of South Africans who consider the work of the RR to be vitally important, how they can take specific calls to action forward and support campaigns that you and your colleagues at campaigns are working on.
Thanks, Chris. I think a very clear example of SACP ANC interaction can be found in the Umrabulo documents. Those are ANC policy documents that have been going since the Morogoro conference many decades ago, generations ago, where over the last couple of years, we have seen, especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic, open calls to take advantage of the crisis in order to drive further state intervention, in order to achieve the struggle for socialism. And that's coming out of both the ANC and the SACP. One of those examples is to use the coronavirus pandemic response as a first step towards implementing the national health insurance. Another example, which has recently been resurrected by the SACP just last week, is to take the pension pot and force, through a system of prescribed assets, reallocation of people's savings into state-owned enterprises in order to grow those state-owned enterprises. In addition to that, there is talk now of using the pension pot to fund a universal basic income grant. South Africa, of course, is already in the situation where roughly 28 million people are receiving grants. That's roughly half the population. In a sense, the socialist target has largely been met of having people heavily dependent on the state. The grants are insufficient to provide decent livelihoods, and they're never going to be sufficient because South Africa is a poor country. But that's the position that we're in, and they're looking to grow that by taking away savings. I think that it's worth highlighting Minister Thulas Nxesi, because he is the Minister of Unemployment, effectively, which is the number one problem identified by most South Africans facing this country, and something that we at the IRR really try to tackle in a solutions-oriented way. Two policies there to flag that have been discussed both in those Umrabulo documents, calling for more SACP involvement in the ANC and in SACP documents. One is the national minimum wage. This was Ramaphosa's promise since 2014. It's been a strong talking point. It was then implemented under Thulas Nxesi, and as I've argued in the Financial Mail and elsewhere, we have the world's most counterproductive minimum wage, since 50% of people earn less than that in this country, and there is no other country on earth which has tried to enforce that kind of intervention, where 50% are earning less than the minimum wage because it's been set so high. That's something to push back against. The other is, of course, Minister Nxesi's call that Ramaphosa sign into law the Employment Equity Amendment Bill by September. We've been campaigning against that. We've got over 25,000 signatures now. We've been in legal correspondence with the president. We've been to the union buildings delivering these petitions. We have warned him that it is unconstitutional to sign this bill into law, but if he does so, it will allow Thulas Nxesi to set race quotas across directly 85% of the formal workforce. Using the Barnard principle, you'll be able to say that people literally can't be hired exclusively on the basis of race. And this can apply to anyone of any race. It's this kind of micromanagement of the economy, this kind of central planning, which really finds an ideological intersection between long-standing ANC and SACP policy. And it really pinches on the front of the unemployment line, sort of blocks it off, chases away money, which chases away more jobs, and leaves most South Africans much worse off. So that's an important one for us to continue fighting against. And if we have to, we'll go to court. We're committed to that.
Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the analysis with Gabriel. If you want to let us know your thoughts in the comments below about some of the influence and policies of the SACP in the ANC, do drop those thoughts in the comments below. And also a reminder to support the work of the RR. We will link to their campaigns in the description below. Until next time, this has been Chris Hattingh for the Centre for Risk Analysis. Take care.